What's up, everybody? It's Soren Baker.
Amir, Rahimi.
And today on The Great Debaters, taking it back to a little Beastie Boys, Paul's Boutique. Alright, Amir, so today on The Great Debaters, we're talking about Paul's Boutique, 3 best tracks on this album. We got a suggestion to do this, and we're taking advantage of the suggestion, so thank you for that. And this album is a very mysterious, puzzling album to me on many levels, so it's interesting. We're going to be doing it, but before we get into some of that, because that will tie into some of my selections of the top 3, Amir, what do you remember when you were first hearing this album?
So this one, I was going in order with the Beastie Boys stuff, with like their official albums. So I started off with License to Ill. We did a video on that one, which we'll link at the top of this one in case you can check it out. But so that was that, and then I was like, well, I really like this album. So then I was like, well, Paul's Boutique is next, so let's go to Paul's Boutique. And this one, I actually remember. So back in the day, Amazon, the website, had something called Listmania, and they would have like, basically, if you typed in something in Amazon, it would give you a list of things that you also may like. So I'll look up, certain rap albums. And then when I looked up, License to Ill, this would pop up. And then sometimes the people who made the list would write like little descriptions as to why they chose that to help you, to gear you to buy it. Okay. So Paul's Boutique was on a lot of these lists. And I was going to listen to it anyways, but I sometimes like to see what people were saying. And everyone was talking about the sampling and just the production. And back then, my palate was not that, deep in terms of rap. So I remember listening to this, and I was just like, what the heck is going on? There's so many different sounds. There's really, honestly, this album took a little bit of growing for me, but I really liked it. And back then, my top 3 is so different than it is now. And honestly, as I've said in a few other videos, my top 3 can change it any week, but this one, I don't even have a favorite song on this album. I really don't. And most albums, I can at least pinpoint 1 or 2 that could be my favorite. This one, no idea. So with that being said, we'll get into one of my tentative top 3s, and that would be High Plains Drifter being one of them. And to be honest, a lot of what the Beastie Boys say in a lot of their songs, I don't get all of the references, because I just don't, because they reference like a lot of like movies that I haven't seen, and probably like some TV shows and like some other stuff, so I try and get it to the best of my ability without looking things up, and then eventually I'll have to look things up. But High Plains Drifter is just, I love just, first of all, how they're saying High Plains Drifter, and then you kind of hear the echo and all that, like whenever they're saying High Plains Drifter. And it's as a lot of this album is, and a lot of their music is, you hear all the BCs kind of going back and forth, and they're clearly just in the studio doing all this together. I'm sure a lot of it's choreographed, I'm sure a lot of it's freestyle too, and they're really just going very well with the song. But then also I really like the song, how they're just like, it's talking about like a guy he's stealing, he's going to Kmart, he's a klepto Kmart shoplifter, he hits the guy at 7-Eleven in the turban with a bag of ice, he jacks the place, he gets pulled over by the police, and the police is like, why is there mailboxes in your car, like, because he had ran over, as he says, he plowed through mailboxes going 120 miles an hour, so he's like, all right, I'm reading your rights, you're going to jail, and it's just so weird, like, the words are saying, it's hilarious, like, he steals the bailiff's wallet, he leaves the court, he takes a car. It's just like the story of this guy who's just really just living just whatever the heck he wants to do. And I feel like a lot of Beastie Boys songs are pretty like free in nature, free-spirited. But High Plains Drifter, I think the production is great, as most of the songs on this album, and I really like just the comedic rhymes, and that has to be one of my picks.
Well, I do think that this album, maybe more than the other Beastie Boys albums that I like and that I've listened to a lot, which is really the first 4 major release albums I listened to more than the rest of their catalog. But I think that the production on this album is so, to me, dense and layered in a positive way, and I really like it. And it just, High Plains Drifter is a great example of that. That's not one of my picks, but I do think that to your point, the echo and the different effects and the panning that they use and these different things on the sonic side of things on that song in particular, I really enjoy. The story is kind of like a lot of their stories is kind of, I don't really know what's going on or the point of it per se, but I like it. But it's also not one of my picks. So I'm going to go to my first pick, which is Eggman. And that one, I think I always was drawn to because for whatever reasons, it reminded me of I Am the Walrus by the Beatles. Because they also talk about Eggman with the Beatles, and they had all these weird characters too, and that kind of always made me think of the Beatles, and they were also on Capitol Records at the time, and they sampled the Beatles a little bit on this album. So it just had a bit of nostalgia for me, but then I also liked the Public Enemy stuff they had on the song, the different references, and then the story again is kind of like, you know, I don't understand or know or like what's going on, but sonically, nostalgic wise, and just the willingness as they've shown throughout their career to this point, which really, to me, this is their second album that I had heard. I didn't know the punk stuff really, or had heard of it, or had any exposure to it at this point. But I just was like, man, these dudes are kind of wild, and they're taking somewhat of some sort of maybe inspiration reference to the Beatles, which I, thought was pretty cool.
So Eggman is actually one of my picks too.
Okay.
And it's funny because I was looking like in my iTunes to see like what my highest played songs were, and this was not even like in the top 5 highest played songs. But as I was listening to the album again, I'm like, no, this has to be one of my favorites.
It's really good.
So it's funny, like this album, literally, you can ask me next week, be something else. But Eggman is one of them, and also I was gonna mention the Public Enemy references, which I'm happy you did because it was dope. And it's funny how they say like drive-by, like egg shootings, like they're throwing eggs, and just like it's interesting what you're saying. And this is for my next pick. I'll bring it up again, but how you said sometimes you don't know what they're talking about, but you like it. And I feel like that's the same thing I have with a lot of the Beastie Boys songs too. Mm-hmm. It's catchy, it's entertaining, the beat's awesome, they're flowing, like there's a lot of charisma. So it's like, sometimes, I don't know the full 100% scope of the purpose of the song. But Eggman too, back when I was right out of high school, I was doing some dumb things. And I was also in Eggman, you can say, because I used to throw eggs at people on the street.
Amir.
I know, it was immature, but it was pretty funny at the same time. So
taking those penitentiary chances, huh?
so this song, listening to it again, I was like, oh man, that's what I used to do. It was funny, like my logic was interesting, because I would only throw at people, but never cars or anything, because I was like, well, that's property damage, it costs $100 to fix that. An egg to the body, you can shower, just wash your clothes. So, I guess I had some sort of ethics while breaking the law. So anyways, it was funny. So back then, I clearly haven't done that in years, but, Eggman, it always makes you think of that too, just the comedic elements of the song. So that's my second pick.
All right. Well, that's also one of my picks, obviously. So I'll go on to my second pick then, which is Looking Down the Barrel of a Gun. Now, this one I really like for reasons that I probably wouldn't normally like songs, because this one is very heavy and dense, which I like on the sonics and the production side of thing, but it's also driven by the rock guitar. And that's something I usually shy away from, other than rare examples like Brother's Gonna Work It Out by Public Enemy, for instance, is one that I love that's driven by guitar. But Looking Down the Barrel of the Gun, it's really the sonics for me. The production of it is so phenomenal to me. I love how they use the break beats. I love the guitar. And I just think that the feel of this song, even though it's done differently later, kind of to me is one of the songs that sets the stage the most for what Check Your Head and Ill Communication are going to be, because it has the more rockish type of element, even though it has the hip hop undertone with the break beat, but then it has the guitar. And I think that's when you get into Check Your Head, and that's a lot more with Sabotage, for instance. It kind of, to me, is a foreshadowing of what we're going to hear more of from them. Maybe I'm right, maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I took from it when I would hear Check Your Head, and then I would hear this again. I was like, oh, okay, maybe that's the precursor of this project. But all that to be said, I also just thought it was cool to hear them, because they're usually so whimsical when they rhyme and like fun and floating around, and this one they sounded more serious and more rough, I guess you want to say, and that was obviously very different from License to Ill. It's also very different from the majority of the rest of Paul's Boutique, and that's in general the sound and the feel that I gravitate more toward in general. So I just love that song.
That's another great one. That was another one where I was like, I want to add it, but I'm not gonna. So, and my last pick is Car Thief. And honestly, as you were saying,
Amir's big into crime this album.
I know. As you were saying, like, the production is just so incredible, and honestly, if you just look at the samples they use, they've used so many, like, just so many, and I think the way it was done was so well done. So shout out to Beastie Boys on production, the Dust Brothers on production. It's just really, when you see this many, you know, elements come to make just one instrumental, it's just incredible to me. And so big shout out to that. But Car Thief, speaking of which, it has some of my favorite samples used in it. I also, in this song, I don't know exactly what's going on totally. Like, they're talking about doing a lot of drugs, you know, like the space cake cookie and the cocaine and ecstasy, and you know, they're doing like a bunch of stuff, but the beat to me is amazing, like their flow is great. I just really like this song for replay value. It's like one of those songs that I remember when I was younger, I was just playing so much because I was just infatuated with how it sounded more so with what they were saying. And sometimes I listen to music just for that feeling. It's not always, you know, to pick my brain or to analyze something. Sometimes it's just obviously for pure enjoyment.
Right.
So that's one of those songs. And Car Thief, I just love the sonics of it, man. It's a great one.
I agree, man. And it's toward the end of the album, which also is great in the sense that Shadrach, toward the end of the album, I don't even know how you pronounce B-Boy, whatever that is, the 12...
whatever.
Booyah Booths or whatever, but, you know, the end of this, the album doesn't have any weak points, in my opinion, and that's phenomenal that these great songs are toward the end of the album. And shout out to DJ Hurricane, who they showcased in a Shadrach video, but that's not my pick. My third pick is Hey Ladies. Now, it's kind of that quirky, fun Beastie Boys. I love cowbells. Shout out to Go-Go. So I was drawn to the sonics of that. But then, you know, I like fun songs too. And it was just a very unorthodox song and very different and kind of shocking. And even though initially I didn't like this song as much because the video really threw me off with the aesthetic that they used, the thrift shoppy, weird, were avant-garde. I don't know. It just totally threw me off. I like this song better than I like this song and the video at the same time. Even though now I really appreciate it, and also visually that really kind of, again, foreshadowed into what was going to go on with the Sabotage video and some of their other videos with these alter egos that they created and continued. But all that to be said, Hey Ladies, it was just funky and like, you know, with the rhymes like she'll show you a good time, then she'll show you the door. It was just kind of like going from the continuation of the frat type of thing they had on License to Ill, but then they were also showing you, like, you know, sometimes the ladies are in charge, or sometimes, you know, you gotta do things a little differently or realize things a little differently. So I just always appreciated that and how it took a little bit of a different angle. And even though it was a single, sonically, I just thought it was great, as I thought with all of this album. Like, sonically, it's just spectacular. And for those that slept on this album a little bit, like I did when it first came out in '89, I would highly recommend, even if you don't like the Beastie Boys, really, really, really listen to the music and the sonics of it, because it was constructed in a way that was very Bomb Squad-esque, with all the samples and the layers and the different songs coming in and out all the time, as was best evidenced on It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back. So it's phenomenally structured and put together. But that's that. So you got my 3 picks for Paul's Boutique, the Beastie Boys, and you guys got Amir's 3 picks. Be sure to hit us up in the comment section. Like, subscribe, and share to both Unique Access Entertainment and Rappin' and Snackin'. Hit us up in the comments, and of course we'll get back to you. And catch us next time on The Great Debaters.
Be sure to check out the History of Gangster Rap by Soren Baker. He's official.
History of Gangster Rap features exclusive interviews with Ice-T, Snoop Dogg, MC Ren, the D.O.C, and dozens of others. The History of Gangster Rap, a definitive look at how Los Angeles changed rap forever.
In Los Angeles, the streets definitely set the tone of the hip-hop music.
At 19, I got a $50,000 car.
My whole angle always was, I'll be street, but I will always tell you the horrors that go along with this life.
There will be penalties and casualties for just wearing the wrong color in somebody's neighborhood.
And once gangster rap made it from the streets to the TV, the genre exploded.
With Fab 5 on Your MTV Raps with NWA.
Yo MTV, it just catapulted us from being local heroes to national gangbang rappers.
The History of Gangster Rap discusses it all from 1980 up till today.
It's always gonna be shit happening in the streets. You know what I mean? So it's always gonna be something to talk about.
The History of Gangster Rap in stores now.